Going to give you a quick demo on what you can do with Melbourne's open data for our exercise. So if you just typed into a web browser Melbourne Open Data, you would get a link to the City of Melbourne Open Data portal. And here there are just a bunch of data sets which you can explore, export, visualize, or map. There are a range of different kinds of projects that they have here, from land use and employment through to things like, uh, live pedestrian data, parking, all kinds of things like that, bike share, live feed. If you go into the open data listing of all, you will see that there are basically 161 different data sets, which you can see here. So I'll just go to let's just try putting in let's see if we can find anything about bars, taverns, and pubs. That'll be interesting enough. So if we go to, this is data collected as part of a census of land use and employment, bar, tavern, pub, and patron capacity 2015. So we can see here that it's giving us a bunch of information: census year, block ID, property ID. It's got the street address, the area of Melbourne CBD, trading name, number of patrons, and a location. So we could do something with even more years here, but let's kind of keep it pretty simple for the moment. There's all kinds of things that you can do here in terms of filtering out different kind of amounts of data. You can export it, you can start, there are some sort of built-in visualization tools. But what we might do is, because there's some location data here, which is kind of quite useful, we might kind of go and do this in Google, because that will just hopefully give us a little bit more capability with the mapping. So what I'll do is I'll just take all this data and export it firstly, and we will export it as a CSV file. Great. And then I will go to sheets.google.com. Now, because I'm already logged in with a Google account, I already have a Google Sheet set up, but you may need to set that up. But firstly, you can just make a new sheet, and you can import that data which we just downloaded. Let me try this. Upload, select a file from the computer, and that file I think went into the downloads here, bar, tavern, patron, pub, capacity. Great. So the reason we would kind of put this in, we will create a new spreadsheet. The reason we'll put it into Sheets first before kind of doing other visualization with it is just that in Google Sheets it's just a lot easier to manipulate bits of data, and we've got some things here that we're not really going to use. So things like block ID, That's pretty meaningless to us, so we can kind of get rid of that for the moment. Column. Base property ID, I don't think we're going to need that. This small area, that's all the same thing, it's just Melbourne CBD, we can get rid of that. But what we have got is we can get rid of this one as well. So we've got these are all from 2015, I think, so this census year is going to be kind of not that useful for us either. So delete that column. So we have street address, trading name, number of patrons, and locations. And we have about 276 rows there for that. So that's looking pretty good to me. So let's, now that we've got that, we will download that as a CSV again as well. Go and have a look at the Finder. Here it is, and we'll just call this one edited. Right. So now we're going to a product which is called Google Fusion Tables. So if we type in Fusion Tables, we will probably pick up Google Fusion Tables. Here it is. So it's an experimental data visualization web application to gather, visualize, and share data tables, which is what we want to do. So let's go there. All right, we want to create a Fusion table. You can also do, you can import different kinds of data sets from out on the web, but we're going to use this one. Oh, we could have gone directly from Google Spreadsheets, but I'll just go from this computer that we've just from the computer we've just downloaded. Here's our edited CSV file, and we can go next. And it's basically got, this tells us the column names are in row 1. Yes, that's correct. That information all looks right. Sometimes, your different sort of data formats can get messed up, but so that's just a way that you check it before you import it. Next, we can attribute the data to City of Melbourne, just in case anyone else is looking at it. And we could even put in the link to their page there. Great, let's do that. Okay, so it's given us 275 rows. First thing you need to do before you can do anything within Fusion Tables is to check that the type of information that you have is correct. So let's firstly just have a look at street address. It says that it's type of text, so that makes sense to us. Same trading name. Check this, that's text as well. But these two, wherever you've got numbers, are important because this changes how it makes reference to it. So you want to make sure that, say, a column like number is not actually text, but is actually set to number, because that changes how the how the application will interpret it. And then finally, and possibly most importantly, this one with the location. You can see here that it's been imported and it thinks it's text, but we want to actually tell Google Fusion Tables that that's a location. And if we do that, so we'll change that column, and it will sort of tell us here that that yellow is just telling us that it's actually recognizing it. So this is our data. It doesn't look like anything's happened much yet, but what we've done is that we've actually kind of prepared ourselves to be able to do quite a lot of things. So firstly, you have here that there are a kind of set of cards. We can click on this plus symbol and we can do something which is cool, like add a map. And might just take, Google is going to basically geocode us. Yeah, so by geocoding, what it's doing is it's taking that location data and putting it into its Google Maps. It'll tell you down here if it's striking any problems, kind of turning that location data into actual addresses. So that's just going to take a while. We can let that, we can go and get something to eat, or kind of have a break, or do something else, or actually kind of go back and have a bit more of a look through other things that we might be working with here while that's all happening. That should just go on in the background. When that's all been uploaded, then we'll be able to kind of place that onto a map, and we can have a think about what we're going to do and what we want to see. The key thing with any kind of data visualization is knowing sort of what your goal is. Then you can actually go and look and see what the software can do there. So this is just one area of Melbourne Data's information. You can get all kinds of different data that you can pull out of there. If you want to get some inspiration, you can actually see what people have actually done with with different kind of visualizations here. Here's someone who's using Melbourne's parking sensor data to depict parking events and violations through the year. You can actually look at information on trees which are in Melbourne's inner area, pedestrian counting and use, and then these kind of GovHack events where you can see things like community maps, which enable the community to find spaces to grow and cultivate community gardens. So if we click on that one, so we have here a list of open spaces, community gardens, schools, all of that kind of information. So yeah, so you can see that this is a real growth area of sort of making city data available for people to do various kinds of things with, to understand what's happening in the city, to create new kinds of applications from that data as well. Some interesting kind of issues that we might be thinking about in light of readings, such as what happens when this data is kind of made available for, it's maintained by the public sector, but then it's made available for private sector uses. Yeah, it's interesting kind of relationships between public and private in that area. It looks like our geocoding is just about to come to an end, so the column is now fully geocoded. So we can see that, of course, it's all in Melbourne. And if we zoom in, we can just see some red dots here, which if we click on each of those, any of those red dots, it should tell us a little bit about, you know, what's there. But we want to do something a bit more interesting than that. So what we can do is to, when we configure the map, we can actually change the feature styles here. So instead of just using one icon for a marker, we can actually put things into buckets. So with the number of patrons, we can see it's 10 to 5,000. Here, let's divide this into, say, 4 buckets. And we will use this range. Now, when we had a look at, if we just sort of divide it into 4 buckets like that, you can again start to see that it gives us a bit more of a breakdown, but it's still not really telling us that much that we need to know. They're all yellow. So let's go back and have a look at why that might be the case. That's probably because this first, we've automatically divided the 5,004, but actually most of the premises that we have here have less than 1,200 patrons in them. So to make this a bit more useful, what we might do is change this figure to, let's see if there's between 10 and 100, and we might do 100 and 500, and then we would go to 1,000. Okay. So let's have a look at that, and we'll make these a bit bigger as well. Right, let's try that one. Okay, this gives us something that seems like it's kind of, maybe a little bit more useful. We can, if we click here, we can also set the legend. We can 5, and we can set that here so it tells us what we're looking at. So here we can see that the small bars, there's not actually that many of them, but there are a lot in the 100 to 500 area mostly, and then we can see some of these large venues like the MCG, for example, that have much larger kinds of premises. So so that's kind of a short example of what you can do. The other thing that you might kind of do here is to, if we wanted to edit those, we can change what pops up in the info window. So we might, instead of having that location there, we'll just have their street address, trading name, and number of patrons. We'll save that. So if we look at John Sellers, 40 patrons, 166 Albert Street. So, that's just a real beginning, but it'd be interesting to see, what bits of data you can do and what kinds of, what things that you can create out of it. You can also create, if you have a look here, you can add